Welcome to this deep dive into Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington.
Yeah.
You're looking to kind of get a better grasp on Washington's journey.
Right. And I mean, it's a pretty incredible journey going from being born into slavery to becoming, one of the leading figures in the fight for racial reconciliation.
Yeah. And kind of along the way, you mentioned you wanted to understand the model that he created that really kind of revolutionized Black communities in America.
Yeah, the Hampton-Tuskegee model.
Yeah.
And it's really all about the power of education. He was a huge believer in the dignity of labor and, kind of this vision he had for Black communities. But to really kind of appreciate all of that, we need to go back to the very beginning,
right,
and talk about his early life.
It really is a story that starts from nothing. I mean, imagine being born in a one-room cabin in Virginia.
Right. Dirt floors, barely any furniture, the bare minimum just to survive.
Yeah. I mean, he talks about wearing a flak shirt as a child that was so rough it felt like torture.
Really, just constant discomfort, a lack of basic comforts, and I think it really kind of underscores the deprivation that was so central to the experience of enslaved people.
Right.
But it also reveals something pretty incredible about Washington's character. Even as a child, he had this resilience, this ability to endure hardships that I think would break a lot of adults.
Yeah, it really is amazing how he just kind of continues to overcome these obstacles. And, one of the things that I found so fascinating was how slaves, even without formal education, were able to keep up with what was going on with the abolition movement through what they call the grapevine telegraph.
Yeah, it was a fascinating system, wasn't it? It wasn't just, a simple whisper network.
Yeah.
This telegraph involved intricate systems of coded messages, hidden meetings,
right,
trusted individuals who risked their lives to relay information. And it just shows you how much enslaved people thirsted for knowledge. They wanted to be free, and they clung to every bit of news that suggested that freedom might actually be possible.
Yeah, it wasn't just this kind of passive hope. They were actively working towards it. It really was an act of resistance fueled by knowledge and hope. And then the day that freedom finally arrived, Washington describes it as just this overwhelming mix of emotions, right? There was joy and confusion and then this sudden weight of responsibility.
Right. And he also talks about the really complicated emotions that were present at the time, particularly how some of the older slaves actually felt this weird attachment to their former owners.
Yeah.
Which I think speaks to the deeply complicated nature of human relationships, even within a system as brutal and as inhumane as slavery.
Yeah, it's hard to even fathom that complexity. Now, this newfound freedom obviously brought new yearnings. And for Washington, the biggest one was a burning desire to learn to read.
Yeah, and he was already working at that time, right? At a salt furnace in West Virginia just to support his family.
Right. But he convinces a teacher to give him lessons at night. I mean, he even rigged the furnace clock so he could sneak away to school.
I mean, that's classic Washington right there. This determination, this resourcefulness, that's really kind of a recurring theme throughout his whole life. Mm-hmm. He saw education as the key to unlocking his potential, and he was absolutely determined to get it no matter what obstacles stood in his way.
Yeah, and there were so many obstacles, right? He talks about not having proper clothes for school, a beat-up secondhand book, but he just kept pushing forward.
He did.
And he even mentions how working in the coal mines, crushed the spirits of so many young Black boys.
Yeah.
And how he saw it just rob them of their aspirations.
And I think that's really what fueled his belief in the power of practical hands-on education, right? He recognized that education wasn't just about books and lectures. It was about equipping people with the skills they needed to actually build a life for themselves. And that was especially important for Black people in the South at that time who were facing so much discrimination and limited opportunities.
Right. And then there's Mrs. Ruffner.
Oh, yeah.
Who was this, pivotal figure in his life.
Yeah.
This strict but fair white woman he worked for. Mm-hmm. And she instills in him the values of cleanliness, promptness, honesty, and the dignity of labor.
And these weren't just chores for her, right? These were actual lessons in character.
Yeah.
This is where you really start to see the seeds of the Hampton-Tuskegee model being sown. Washington really learned from Mrs. Ruffner that even in the most humble tasks, there was dignity, there was self-respect.
And then his journey to Hampton Institute. I mean, what an adventure.
Yeah.
Imagine selling your only coat for travel money, hopping on trains with barely anything to your name, and even sleeping under sidewalks in Richmond just to make it there.
And you have to remember, this is, post-Civil War America. Racial prejudice was absolutely rampant. He was denied food at restaurants just because of the color of his skin.
It's heartbreaking to think about, the adversity he faced just to pursue an education.
And yet he persisted, and when he finally gets to Hampton, he takes whatever work he can find, unloading ship's cleaning. He even works as a janitor at the Institute just to survive.
And get this, he's ultimately admitted to Hampton because of a sweeping test.
A sweeping test.
His meticulous cleaning skills impressed the head teacher so much that she offered him a job right then and there.
I mean, again, you see that resourcefulness, right? He finds a way to turn a simple task into an opportunity, and it speaks to his humility, too. He doesn't see cleaning as beneath him. He sees it as a chance to showcase his work ethic, his commitment to excellence.
And that's where he meets General Samuel C. Armstrong. This is a man who becomes a mentor and just a profound influence on his life.
Absolutely. Armstrong was a huge believer in learning by doing a philosophy that would really shape Washington's entire approach to education.
Right.
He saw in Washington this young man with just immense potential, and their relationship really was transformative, and they even endured this harsh winter living in tents with other students just to,
Whoa.
stay at the school. Can you imagine that kind of dedication?
I mean, it's hard to fathom. But that experience taught Washington valuable lessons about selflessness, resilience, lessons that he would carry with him throughout his life.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings us to another really important moment, and that's Washington's call to lead the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama.
Right.
This is where his vision really starts to take shape.
Yeah.
He's invited to lead this new school for Black students in an area that's desperately poor and lacking in opportunities.
You mentioned wanting to understand the model that Washington created, and it really all began right here in Tuskegee.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't just want to build a school, he wanted to build a community. And even before he started teaching, he spends a month traveling through the South, really absorbing the realities of life for Black people after emancipation.
And what he saw on those travels really cemented his belief that practical industrial education was the key. He recognized that Black communities needed to become self-sufficient. They needed to have the skills to thrive in a society that wasn't exactly welcoming them with open arms.
So picture this Tuskegee in its early days. I mean, you've got a dilapidated church, an old shanty, even a hen house being used as classrooms.
Wow.
Washington has 30 eager students, but many of them come with this disdain for manual labor.
And that's understandable, right? After generations of forced labor under slavery, manual work was associated with oppression. Washington's challenge was to transform that perception, to show his students that skilled craftsmanship could actually be a source of pride and liberation.
And he knew he needed land, so they buy a 100-acre farm. But it's far from ready for a school, so what do? Students and teachers rolled up their sleeves and they got to work. They cleared land, they dug basements. I mean, the very act of building the school became a lesson in teamwork and self-reliance.
Yeah, that collaborative effort is at the very heart of the Hampton-Tuskegee model. It wasn't just about learning a trade. It was about building a community, fostering a sense of ownership, and proving that they could create something from nothing.
And brick making really became this powerful lesson. At first the students saw it as menial work, but Washington was determined to show them otherwise.
And this is a perfect example of how he integrated practical skills with academic learning. Building the school itself became an educational experience. They weren't just learning about brick making. They were learning about perseverance, about problem solving, and the satisfaction of creating something tangible with their own hands.
And it wasn't easy. They built 3 kilns and each one failed.
Oh, wow.
Imagine the frustration. But they didn't give up. On the 4th try, they finally succeed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That resilience in the face of setbacks is another one of those hallmarks of Washington's character. He instilled in his students the belief that failure wasn't the end. It was just a step on the path to success.
Now let's talk about the Atlanta Exposition Address. This was a pivotal moment in Washington's life, a chance to articulate his vision to a national audience. So picture this, a packed auditorium, a mixed audience of Black and white attendees, all eyes on him.
It's a big stage.
Yeah. This is where Washington's philosophy really takes center stage.
And remember, this is just a few decades after the Civil War. Racial tensions are still incredibly high. I mean, Washington's walking a tightrope here, trying to deliver a message that will resonate with both Black and white audiences.
And he even recounts this story about a white farmer warning him about the mixed audience, saying, "Washington, you have spoken before the northern white people, the Negroes in the South, and to us country white people in the South. But Atlanta tomorrow, you will have before you the northern whites, the southern whites, and the Negroes all together. I am afraid that you have got yourself in a tight place.
Yeah, that anecdote perfectly captures the pressure that Washington was under. One wrong word could have had serious consequences.
And his speech really becomes known for this cast down your bucket metaphor,
Right.
where he urges Black Americans to work alongside their white neighbors to focus on economic progress as a path to equality.
And it's important to understand that that metaphor was directed at both Black and white audiences. To Black Americans, it was a call to action. Make the most of your current circumstances, develop your skills, and build economic strength. To white Southerners, it was a message of reassurance. Black progress won't threaten your way of life. It can actually benefit us all.
And the speech was a sensation.
It was.
It catapulted Washington into the national spotlight, particularly among Southern whites, who saw his message of racial cooperation as a path forward.
And the impact of that speech was undeniable. It really solidified Washington's position as a leading voice for Black America, and it shaped the conversation about race relations for years to come.
Of course, we can't talk about Washington without talking about Tuskegee's growth.
Yeah.
I mean, it flourishes under his leadership.
Yep.
He tirelessly fundraises, always emphasizing hard work and community contribution. I mean, it's incredible they even built the school buildings themselves.
Yeah, Tuskegee really became this living, breathing embodiment of Washington's philosophy. It wasn't just a school, it was testament to the power of self-reliance, practical education, and Black excellence.
And his personal philosophy is so grounded, too. He talks about finding joy in the simple things. Work, rest, nature.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even amidst the struggle, he found a way to appreciate life's beauty. He even shares this story about receiving a surprising invitation to return to his hometown in West Virginia, a place he had left years earlier, poor and unknown.
Wow, and that invitation speaks volumes. He went from an impoverished, nameless child to a respected leader recognized by both Black and white communities.
And talk about recognition. I mean, he receives an honorary degree from Harvard, is invited to the White House by President McKinley. Tuskegee even gets a presidential visit. It's remarkable to see the heights he reached and the influence that he wielded. It's amazing to think about everything that he was able to accomplish, starting from absolutely nothing.
Right.
Reading up from slavery, it's like you're stepping back in time to this really pivotal period in American history. Through Washington's eyes, we witnessed the horrors of slavery, but also this incredible determination to rebuild a nation.
Yeah, and what really strikes me is his unwavering optimism. I mean, despite experiencing unimaginable hardship, he never lost sight of the possibility of progress and reconciliation.
Right.
It's a testament to the enduring power of hope, even in the face of seemingly impossible odds.
And it wasn't blind optimism, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't naive to the injustices that Black Americans were facing.
Yeah.
But he believed that through education, through economic empowerment, and a focus on gradual progress, real change was possible.
And that's a crucial point. Washington understood that lasting change wouldn't happen overnight. He advocated for a strategy of building up Black communities from the ground up. He believed that economic self-sufficiency and practical skills were the foundation for social and political progress.
And that's why Tuskegee becomes such a powerful symbol. It wasn't just a school. It was a living embodiment of his philosophy. The students learned trades, they built their own dorms, they cultivated the land, all while receiving a solid academic education.
The Tuskegee model was truly revolutionary for its time. It challenged the traditional idea of education as purely intellectual. It showed the value of hands-on learning, the dignity of labor, and it provided a space for Black Americans to develop their talents and contribute to the economy.
It really makes you wonder how things might have been different if more institutions had embraced this approach.
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? While the fight for immediate social and political equality, during the civil rights movement was essential, one can't help but wonder if a broader adoption of Washington's model could have led to greater economic parity and social cohesion over time.
Of course, Washington's legacy is complex. There have been debates and criticisms over the years. Some argue that his emphasis on accommodation and gradualism ended up reinforcing racial inequalities. Others view him as a pragmatic leader who navigated a very challenging era with wisdom and foresight.
Yeah, and it's important to engage with those critiques thoughtfully and to consider Washington's ideas within their historical context. While some aspects of his approach may seem outdated today, his core message of self-reliance, education, and economic empowerment remained profoundly relevant.
Absolutely. And Up From Slavery really leaves us with this feeling of hope. This enduring belief in the possibility of progress is what makes it such a timeless and inspiring read. It's a reminder that even in the face of immense adversity, the human spirit can triumph, and that each of us has a role to play in building a better world.
Yeah, and it also prompts us to think about, how we can apply Washington's legacy to the challenges that we face today. How can we create educational systems that empower all students to reach their full potential? How can we foster economic opportunities that bridge racial and socioeconomic divides?
Those are questions worth pondering as we continue the journey towards a more just and equitable society. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Booker T. Washington.
Yeah, we hope you'll continue to explore his work and the remarkable story that he represents.